The spirit behind the policy may be very sound or altruistic, but it is clear that the implementation is working a lot of hardship for Nigerians. And every policy of government or actions of government, whether at the federal or state levels, should be for the benefit of the greatest good or for the greatest good of the greatest number of our people.
Yeah, in one word, I would say it is good policy, poor implementation, or good policy with ulterior motive in implementation. That's why you're having the chaos you're having today. There is no problem. There is not that is there a problem to design currency. It happens all over the world. At every point in time, countries design their currencies or design them.
I believe that the CBN means well, and that the policy is to stabilize the naira and stabilize the economy. But if they now proceed in the way they are now proceeding in the show the implementation arrangement, then we would then say, oh, maybe they have a hidden agenda.
The banks are no longer paying out the old currency. So that has limited money supply. And according to figures, the CBN is recording about 3 trillion naira, and they're only releasing 350 billion of the new currency. So there will be mass currency shortage. And let's also the fact that Nigeria is a heavily cash dependent economy. We have not gotten to the level where the market demand, the bus driver is accepting, has a POS, is accepting online transfer and online payment.
Good to have you back. And on the Supreme Court's injunction, very quickly before we start, Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Mr. Abubakar Malami, said why the federal government would obey the Supreme Court's ruling, which put hold on the Central Bank of Nigeria's demonetization policy, the government would take necessary steps to set aside the interim order. But Malami clarified that the federal government, out of its regard for the rule of law, would abide by the order of the Apex Court, even though it intends to challenge it and will do so within the provisions of the law, which is quite interesting, I would say. But let's start with the lawyer in the building. How did you see the Supreme Court's ruling? Do you feel it was out of order, or do you feel like the three state governors, that is the Kaduna, Kogi, and Zamfara, that went to court, you feel like they did the right thing, or it might be just too late, looking at the time it came in?
Well, first and foremost, every aggrieved person, in this case a state, has the right to approach the Supreme Court or even a court of law at whatever level. But in this case, the Supreme Court was what they approached. Now, the Supreme Court of Nigeria, just as many other Supreme Courts in other jurisdictions in the world, are not just there to interpret the letter of the law, but they are courts that define public policy. They lay down what the policy should be. They feel the pulse of the nation and try to move in line with decisions and judgments that will calm nerves. If you agree with me, the issue of this Naira swap has been a thorn in the flesh. And these three states, coming together through the attorney generals, went to the Supreme Court to say, look, if we stick to the 10 February deadline, if the federal government sticks to it, it's going to affect so many people. My constituents, my state people, that is Kogi, Zamfara, and Kaduna. They presented their case to the court. Now, so many things have been thrown up by that interim injunction. By Wednesday 15th, the matter will now come up to know whether an interlocutory injunction will be placed pending the determination of the main suit, or whether the injunction will be vacated and will go back to the status quo. But one thing we have to bear in mind is this, that for now, the judgment of that court subsists, the injunction subsists. And what they have said is, the old currency is still legal tender until we sit properly to know which way to go. So what we are seeing, it's that, I would say, public policy aspect of our Supreme Court. To calm the nerves, a lot of people have come up to say this, but the truth is that majority of Nigerians, I believe, saw that judgment as a kind of relief. Because 10th February in mind, And if the 10th February were to hold, a lot of issues will have come up. So many people didn't even see the new Naira. Up till now, I've not seen the new currency.
Really?
I have seen it, but where is it to go into the bank and get it? I have to line up early in the morning, get a tag or a tally, as they say, and then keep waiting. Sometimes you get to the bank, they say they don't have the money. I can't line up for that. So I'm still using the old currency. And that is part of the relief which the Supreme Court in that interim injunction gave Nigerians. I just hope that by Wednesday, when the matter comes up again, something brighter than what we have will come out of it. So far, I would say so good. Okay?
And let us look at the way court cases usually proceed in Nigeria. It's not something that we get swift response either immediately. From Wednesday 15th, we might have it being adjourned, we might have it being shifted for so long. And we have to say that is not really what Nigerians need right now. So pending that Wednesday, are we supposed to just hope that something miraculous happens and then maybe that would immediately have this soothing balm on Nigerians right now? Because if Wednesday Supreme Court does not reach a decision, of course we are not expecting that the decision should be reached immediately. So does that mean that we might still be spending the both old and new Naira notes hand in hand until the Supreme Court reaches a decision?
Something will happen on Wednesday. And now this is it. Already there is a preliminary objection filed by the federal government through the AG of the Federation. And this objection is to the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court to hear this matter. So many legal experts have come up to say that the relief being sought by the three states don't fall within the jurisdiction, the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Remember Section 232 of the Constitution as amended, 1999 I mean, provides that the Supreme Court shall exercise original jurisdiction in some instances. And one key instance is where there is a matter between the Federation and states. Now, over the years, we have had the interpretation of this section. Because you look at the law, when you see Federation, what comes to your mind quickly is federal government. But the Federation here is not the federal government in the sense of the way that the Attorney Generals have gone to court. It is in the sense where the Federation and the states are contesting in their capacities as federating units of the Federation. Zamfara State, Kogi State, Kaduna State. In your capacity as federating units, there is a contest, there is a conflict which you approach the Supreme Court for, that the Supreme Court needs to pronounce over. Now, you look at issues like revenue formula. That is an issue. And when you look at the percentage, I think it's 52 for the federal, 40 or 30-something, 40-something for the state and local government. A formula, something of that nature, is an issue that the Supreme Court can invoke their original jurisdiction for. Now, what the issue is here is the relief which the states are asking for is one which directly impinges on the Central Bank of Nigeria, which can be seen as an agency of the federal government, even though they are autonomous to some extent. But it has to do with handling of currency, printing of currency, circulation of currency. That is not a direct question between the federal government, between the Federation and the states. There's a preliminary objection already raised by the federal government on this. And when you look at decided cases like the AG of Lagos against the AG of Federation 2014, then the AG of the Federation against the AG of Lagos 2017, and so many other cases, where, in this case, the Lagos state government took the federal government to court at the Supreme Court, invoked the original jurisdiction and said the FIRS is overlapping in their work with the LIRS. When that matter came up, when you look at it ordinarily, we say, yes, Lagos State took the federal government to court. But when the justices sat down, they said, no, this has to do with an agency of the federal government, FIRS. And when this aspect comes up, which has nothing to do with you, Lagos State, as a federating unit, then this court cannot be the court of first instance. Our original jurisdiction cannot be invoked. The matter was now sent out of the Supreme Court, and Lagos had to go to the Federal High Court, pursuant to Section 251, one of the same Constitution 1999, where the Federal High Court has an original jurisdiction in matters between governments, but this time not as federating units, concerning the agencies, FIRS, NPA, and all of that. So now, for Wednesday, coming Wednesday, there is a preliminary objection which will be looked at by the court. And if that objection is upheld, the entire matter will be vacated from the Supreme Court. Which means we get back to the status quo. The central bank will now tell us that the deadline is here, that the old notes can no more be legal tender, except, of course, except if the central bank should now amend and say something else, based on public policy again.
Okay.
Alternatively, the Supreme Court could hear the objection, dismiss it. Now, here the interlocutory motion. Interlocutory means two people. What happened on Wednesday was, now someone is distressed, in this case Zamfara, Kaduna, and they quickly ran to the Supreme Court and put in an ex parte application. Ex parte means without hearing the other side. So that application was upheld, was heard by the Supreme Court. That is the result of what we see. The injunction was given. An interim injunction doesn't last for long. Most times it lasts between 7 days and 10 days maximum. So that a date, a very close date will be given for you now to serve the other party. And the party to now come and present his own side of the story. After which, the court can now either give another injunction, this time it's interlocutory, and this can last for quite a time. In fact, most times it's going to be pending, however long that case stays. Otherwise, it will be vacated. Like I said, if it's vacated, nothing again for Nigerians. We now go back to the Supreme Court, to the central bank.
Wow, that is very insightful. And talking about central bank policy, on 3rd of February, President Muhammadu Buhari pleaded with Nigerians to give him 7 days so that we would have maybe a sort of relief to this cash crunch. And that 7 days expired on February 10. So if not for these 3 states that went to the Supreme Court, let us look at all the things we have on ground, comparing everything. Do you think the president might have been able to do something that would be able to the people would get relief from the action it would take? I'm directing that question to the economist now.
Okay, we were not so sure exactly on what he planned to do, but I believe he has been able to buy time by virtue of what the Supreme Court did. So it wasn't limited to Friday again. It's now actually can continue whatever engagement needs to happen until that case comes up on Wednesday, I believe. So within that period, the CBN is there. You can have a robust engagement with CBN. The governors, don't forget that apart from the 3 first governors, some other new governors have headed for the courts again. On those states, I can't remember the others. They already
the other states,
yeah, they've gone to the court.
Kano State, yes.
So, because now the Council of States, within that same period also, waded into the matter. So the engagement is becoming more wide, more pervasive, more robust. And that will lead to a quicker resolution that will, be able to moderate the kind of pain that people are going through right now.
Okay, and talking about the Council of State, their meeting, they spent like 4 hours in that meeting, perhaps trying to reach a decision. And one of the things they said is either the CBN provides new notes for Nigerians, or the old notes and the new notes should be in circulation hand in hand. How did you see that request they made to the Central Bank of Nigeria?
I think the beauty of the Council of State is that they are not exactly, it's not a partisan group. You have military, you have civilian of one party, you have civilian of another party. So it's a mixed bag. So it is believed that they should be neutral enough to take a decision that will impact the country positively because they are not partisan. Now, what they have said is based on what we can all see, the suffering, massive suffering of the people on this. As early as 6 a.m., people are at the ATMs. When you look at the people at the ATM, they are not even there to do big transactions. 5,000, 10,000, 20,000. That's all they're looking for. I had a situation last week in which, as at 1 p.m., someone had called me to ask for money if I have some cash, because he had not eaten breakfast. He said his brother was supposed to come and give him money so that he can buy something. But unfortunately, the brother got caught up somewhere, wasn't able to come. As at 1 p.m., he had not eaten breakfast. How long are we going to have those kind of situations? So I think it's in the interest of those kind of things that the Council of State had waded in to say, look, CBN or federal government, if it's a of two things, provide this note or allow the old and the new note to co-circulate. These are part of the decision that the president will be making over the next few days.
Okay, all right.
Yes, and I also want to add that the Council of State is advisory in nature. It now behoves the federal government through the president to toe the line of the advice. Of course, you already know, they have the council is made up of all past presidents, head of states, people who have the gray matter, who have presided over the affairs of this country over 20, 30, 40 years. And the experience is not something you can just throw away. It's advisory in nature, but I believe, I pray also that the federal government will take the advice and tell the CBN what to do.
Okay, and now let us talk about, because in measures to ease the suffering of the people, the CBN governor said that Nigerians could go over the counter to get cash. And let us look at the 20,000 naira withdrawal limit, daily withdrawal limit. If you go to the bank counter, I don't think there's any bank over the counter that is paying anyone 20,000 naira. Some banks will pay you 2,000 naira in very dirty 100 naira notes or green 50 naira notes. And is that not breaking what the directive they were given when they were asked to the daily limit of 20,000 naira? And some banks in Kaduna State were complaining that they were giving just 8,000 naira to 10,000 naira. So what should Nigerians do in that situation when there is a directive and the banks are not obeying it?
The challenge we have had over time, just like the entire policy, the Naira swap, a good policy. There's no nation where you have the same currency, of course the same design of their currency running for the past 30 years or thereabout. It's a good policy. We have had good policies. Our problem as a nation has been implementation. You just ask, what should people do? What should people do? Because at the end of the day, it's this ding-dong or ping-pong between the banks, the commercial banks, and the central bank. The commercial banks say we don't have, they've not supplied us enough new notes. The 20,000 naira maximum is expected. People think what they mean is 20,000 naira new notes. 1,000, 500, or 200, or a combination of the three. But you've just said it, and which I have heard that people go there and get even 100 naira as part of what they are giving, not up to 20. Most banks stop at 10,000, some it's 5,000 for the day. We've had all manner of stories. So it's about implementation. And that is what I also believe is part of the reason these states went to court. To say, come, let's look at this from the legal angle. Central bank seems not to be listening to us. The federal government seems not to understand what is going on. Let the courts speak for us. What can individuals do except people resort to self-help, like you just gave in the news, in the summary there of what happened in Ogun State? We saw videos going viral of what happened to bankers. Bankers climbing the fence, perimeter fence of their locations and fleeing for their lives. That can be the only thing people will do. Or go to court. And where you're going to court, and the matter you're going to court for has already been covered by something, another court, another case elsewhere, your own will be thrown out. So it's Nigerians seeing themselves in between the deep blue sea and the devil. Whichever way one goes, it's going to be a big issue. But we pray that common sense, before the end of this week, common sense will prevail.
Yes, and then let us take a look at...
Let me make a comment.
Okay.
You see, the 20,000 limit is an admission of the fact that there are not enough money, that we don't have enough money. That 20,000 naira is believed that it will cover for transactional use. I want to buy food. I want to pay transport. Most of the people you see at the ATM, they're not there for 100,000. They're there for these transactional amounts. So that is why CBN is saying, okay, if they can do 20,000, that will be fine for everybody. But the 20,000, the amount that will go around, is it available at the banks? That is the issue.
That's the issue.
On the left hand, what government did was to withdraw over 2 trillion naira from the economy. And I listened to the CBN governor mention a figure of about 800 and something billion in new notes to be released in tranches. If you withdraw 2 trillion, over 2 trillion, and you're trying to release 800 billion in tranches, it's automatic scarcity. It is not just about the banks. The money is simply not there. So you either print more or you allow the old ones to still continue some element of circulation. That's how we can bridge the gap of what we're seeing right now.
Okay, now let us look at this. Ideally, how much money should be in a functional society? How much money should be circulating in a functional society? Because the situation we have in Nigeria, it's as if it is too much, just too much, and then they are trying to mop it up, which is like the backbone for all these policies. And if we are having like 800 billion and it is still not enough, so ideally, how much should be enough?
There's no hard and fast rule about that, but let me be frank with you. The biggest note in Nigeria is the 1,000 bill. The 1,000 naira bill is less than $2 in value. So in the real sense, when you look at the total cash, it's not much. So the problem is not about the fact that the total cash is too much. It is about the fact that the proportion of that cash that is outside the financial system is too much. But how much is the entire 2 trillion if you convert it to dollars today? It's not much. And when you ask of, there's something we call M1 money in economics. What is the proportion of cash as a percentage of M1 money? It is small. So that's not the issue. But you see, when CBN or we want to roll out any monetary policy that has to do with cash, if most of your cash, 70% of your cash is actually outside of the banking system, that policy will not work because you only have 30% of that cash within the financial system on which that policy could be applied. So that is why it is okay to say, oh, let's bring more of those cash into the financial system because it will help us with monetary policy that are targeted at cash volumes. However, we bungle this at the level of implementation. Very poor
implementation problem.
Implementation.
Yes.
And with the situation we are having at hand now, does that not counter the whole of CBN's policy? Because right now, I don't think the new Naira notes are getting to the banks. It's getting exchanged from one hand to another on transaction basis. I buy something, I pay for it. The other person buys something too, and they pay for it. In fact, I know cases of bus drivers who are no longer taking their money to the bank. They are giving it to POS agents. Well, of course, the POS agents would pay for it too. So now that we don't have money flowing back to the financial institution, does that not sort of counter the OCBN policy?
In a way, it will, in a way, but why that may not take any effect right now is that we still don't have enough of that currency. It's still a very small proportion of it. What you are talking about is natural, is the way the market will move. The monies are not, the new notes are not coming out of the bank, so why give it back to them? So people will rather circulate it among themselves, charge a premium for being in possession of it and make money off it. That is what exactly is going on. And if we're going to moderate that, it's either we do any of those two things that the Council of State spoke about.
Okay, do you want to add
yes,
something?
and you see, this is a dislocation already. Prior to this, we've not had issue of liquidity. Whether you want to buy, of course, when you go to bank to deposit above a particular threshold, the banks will charge some commission. Central bank has always had that. Now, but suddenly, this huge money is withdrawn. And there is no immediate replacement. That's going to give rise to a dislocation, which is what we are seeing right now. Now, what is happening? People are also, in a sense, like you said, getting the cash to keep. As much as I can lay hand on, I keep. I hope you understand, especially those who are not able to do transfers, mobile banking, online banking, and all that. So in a sense, because there's a dislocation, which we believe if the notes are printed very quickly in the next 2-3 weeks, the equilibrium will come back again. Or if it doesn't happen, this dislocation will go for quite some time. And at the end of the day, the money will not still be there. People will now come to hoard and sell, as what we are seeing. People say Naira is being sold for more Naira. That is a dislocation.
And let us now look at the legal angle to that one of cash being sold. Although, like you said, everything now is disoriented, is dislocated. But in a healthy system, is it proper for me to be selling, to be giving Naira to get Naira back? Should there not be penalties for selling Naira against Naira?
Well, the POS users, of course, we have licensed, agents, the First Money and all of that, who are licensed by commercial banks to do banking, money banking at the local, very local level. We have quite a number of them. And they are given the charges which they should make within that, bridge. Yes, they have theirs, and there's something they will give back to the banks. I have a friend, I know someone who does that very successfully, and his charges are minimal. That is what the system legalized. Like I just said, we now have a dislocation. And in a state of anarchy, or near anarchy, as we have seen in the past couple of weeks, everything goes. Should it be so that someone wants 5,000 Naira cash from an agent and is asked to pay 1,000 Naira as a commission? It should not be so. That shouldn't arise, okay? But that is what we see. And you'll be surprised that even the law enforcement agents also look for the cash to get. At that stage, you now ask who is going to bear the cat. and they have to go for these people and then buy the money, as we call it now. But it has to do with charges, and those charges are outrageous, to say the least. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate.
Yes.